What would happen to humanity if we had never started eating meat? Imagine that at some point in evolution, humans simply never took that step, never began to see animals as food. Early humans were not hunters in the way we usually imagine today. Most of the time, they were gatherers. Fruits, roots, nuts, seeds, wild plants, and even insects formed the basis of their diet. In fact, insects were an important source of protein. In some modern hunter-gatherer societies, they can provide as much protein, or even more, than the meat of large animals. It is only around 2.6 million years ago that archaeologists find the first clear evidence that our ancestors began interacting with animal carcasses. In East Africa, particularly in Ethiopia and Tanzania, researchers have discovered bones of antelopes and zebras with characteristic cut marks from stone tools. Most famous site of such discoveries is the Olduvai Gorge, often called the cradle of humanity. On many bones, the marks of large predators' teeth appear first, and the cuts from stone tools come afterward. In other words, early humans arrived at the carcass after lions or hyenas had already fed. They weren't hunting, they were scavenging what was left. Often, the most valuable part for them wasn't even the meat. The real prize was bone marrow. It is one of the most energy-dense foods found in nature. In some bones, up to 80% of the calories come from the fat inside the marrow. That's why archaeologists frequently find bones that were deliberately smashed with stones. Some researchers even believe that some of the earliest stone tools were specifically made to break open bones. On the savanna, humans competed for carcasses, not only with hyenas, but also with vultures. So a large number of birds circling in the sky could serve as a signal to people. Somewhere nearby, there was food. Only much later did humans begin to truly hunt, and they did it in a rather unusual way. Humans are not the fastest predators, but we are among the most enduring. There is a hunting strategy called persistence hunting. Hunters simply chase an animal for hours. Most hoofed animals overheat during long runs, while humans can keep running thanks to efficient sweating. Eventually, the animal literally collapses from exhaustion. This type of hunting still existed in the 20th century. For example, in the sand communities of the Kalahari Desert, hunters could chase an antelope for 4 to 5 hours. Here is where an important evolutionary story begins. Meat is an extremely concentrated source of energy. Protein, fats, amino acids, vitamin B12, iron, and zinc. All of these are essential for brain function, the nervous system, and blood production. There is a hypothesis that regular meat consumption became one of the factors behind the rapid growth of the human brain. Over a few million years, the brain volume of hominins nearly tripled. For example, Australopithecines had a brain volume of about 450 cubic centimeters, while modern humans average around 1,350. The human brain is incredibly energy demanding. It makes up only about 2% of body weight, but consumes roughly 20% of the body's total energy. That is one of the highest proportions among animals. Along with diet, human anatomy also began to change. For example, plant-eating primates have a very large colon that helps digest tough fiber. In humans, it is much smaller. Our intestines are about 1/3 shorter than those of chimpanzees. That's quite surprising considering how genetically close we are. Another turning point was fire. The earliest evidence of controlled fire use dates back about 700 to 800,000 years. And this changed more than just food. Cooked food is easier to digest. This means the body spends less energy on digestion. Some anthropologists even suggest that cooking itself may have helped allow the human brain to grow. Cooking also influenced the shape of the human face. Our ancestors had much larger jaws. When food became softer, the need for powerful jaws disappeared. That's why modern humans have much smaller teeth than early hominins. As hunting developed, social behavior began to change as well. A large animal provided so much food that it had to be shared. Some anthropologists believe that the distribution of meat may have become one of the earliest systems of social exchange. There is even an interesting rule in some modern hunter societies. When a hunter brings back a kill, other members of the group start joking about it and downplaying its value. This is a social mechanism designed to prevent the hunter from seeing himself as better than others. Now imagine a different scenario. What if this had never happened? Humanity might have spread across the planet much more slowly. In cold regions, plant-based food is seasonal. In winter, there is almost none. Hunting is what allowed humans to settle northern territories. For example, mammoth hunters during the Ice Age could obtain thousands of calories from a single kill. One adult mammoth provided tons of meat and fat, enough to feed entire groups of people for a long time. Without such a resource, surviving in an Ice Age climate would have been nearly impossible. The history of human discoveries might also have looked very different. Many important technologies emerged precisely because humans used animals. For example, the first sewing needles were made from bones, and threads were made from animal tendons. These threads were incredibly strong and flexible. They allowed people to create complex clothing from fur and leather. Archaeologists have found such needles that are more than 40,000 years old. Using animals gave people not only materials for tools, but also new resources for everyday life. For instance, animal fat became one of the earliest sources of light for humans. Archaeologists have discovered ancient stone lamps where animal fat was burned with a wick made from plant fibers. These lamps were used tens of thousands of years ago and allowed people to light caves, work at night, or create those famous cave paintings. Human culture might have developed differently as well. For thousands of years, hunting was a central part of rituals, mythology, and art. In the caves of Lascaux in France or Altamira in Spain, most of the drawings depict hunting scenes of bison, deer, or horses. Animals held such an important place in human life that they became heroes of legends, symbols of strength, or even deities. Meat became an important part of human evolution. But the more advanced the world becomes, the more important balance becomes between human benefit and humane treatment of animals. Because evolution made us omnivores, but humanity itself, that is a choice people make consciously.